Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James. Today, I have the great pleasure to be chatting to Trevor Young. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Paul. Very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating life that you lead, and interacting with the footy world in various different capacities, and of course there's the love of the Cats to go alongside all of that. And I'm keen to wade into all of that kind of adult working life, all those sort of those key pillars shortly. But I'd love to, I guess, as we begin, rewind to a point well before that and kind of explore where footy first came into your life, and where did the Cats fit in that mix?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the country, a little place called Warwick-Nabil.
Yep.
Up near Horsham, just north of Horsham, and it was in the days of the zone. So that was actually Essendon zone. And
was it really?
Yes, it was. And I'm not an Essendon fan, although some of my good friends from Warwick-Nabil still are. Surprisingly, they still are. And, you know, when you're in the country, there's nothing much else to do but play footy and talk about footy and be involved in footy. But I just you know, was always playing footy early on, and of the ilk against the likes of, you know, Tim Watson. He played for Dimboola nearby as a guy. Can you believe that he came down at 15 and was from, you know, so ahead of everyone at 15, and I've seen him up close as a schoolboy, and boy, you know, like he was a man child. I digress. My connection with the Cats really is my grandparents lived in Geelong for most of my life. Yep. Anyway. They're now passed on, and my uncle as well. And he was so I was always down at Geelong, and we used to go to, that was the days when you could just walk into Cardinia Park, and my uncle, I don't really know what the connection was, but he had a connection and he got me in there. And I remember once it was, I was very, 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 very young, and but it was in the 60s and all that heyday of Sam Newman and Doug Wade and all of those guys. You're going to test me now on those names.
No, a mini golden era though.
Oh, mate, and it was great. They'd all say hello and talk to you, and did that, and that really cemented it. Even though I was quite young, I still remember that, and I got all of their signatures. This is bittersweet though. I got all of their signatures. You know, when they in the pre-digital age, when you're at a junior footy team or something, they'd write the football team up on the, you know, a piece of paper with an oval on it.
Oh yeah, I know the one.
Stick it in it's probably a bit before your time.
No, but I know the one, and then you can kind of one by one, you can kind of fill in the gaps essentially.
Yeah. It's how you handwrite it, and they use, you know, to tell the team that you're in the team. They'd stick it in the local bakery or somewhere else, and everyone would go down there to see if they got a game, and you know, they had stacks of that, and that's all the players from that Cats era, and they all signed it. And I got that framed and everything. My grandfather framed that for me. And do you reckon I could find it? I've got to tell you, it'd be worth something, really worth something to me personally. But we moved house, and I've never seen it again. And it could well be there, but it's a rarity, let me tell you.
It'll be one of those days. It'll just pop up, and it'll be one of those really special moments, I'm sure. So.
And I'll remember, who's Sam Newman? Who are these guys?
I remember that guy on the Footy Show. What else did he do? Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, it was pretty handy.
So obviously the love of the Cats was there from early days, and obviously, yeah, as you mentioned, kind of just the walk in, kind of the easy access in that sense. But obviously there's, you know, a large portion of your life where, and you know, until kind of the last, even, what are we now, 15 years or so, where success has been hard to come by, even when we've had strong teams. And what was that like for you as you watched on different periods of your life, but the result for the Cats was still kind of the same?
Yeah, I went through probably a period where I was just in my teens, and I was more into music, and I probably dropped off footy a little bit. But back in it, when I'd moved house in 1989, and myself and my mate, and my Essendon mate, we plonked the last bit of furniture down as they bounced the ball for the grand final, and that just rekindled everything in me. Up until then, I was sort of, I don't know if there was a lot going on, and I was watching, but I dropped off footy a little bit.
Yeah.
And that just lit a bomb under me, that one. And I just, from then on, I haven't missed a game. And even though we lost, I've watched that game that many times, and I know we lost, and a few more after that. And But
unfortunately,
at least we got there. That's always the hardest thing to get there. And but that '89 grand final still goes down. Apart from one the other day, that wasn't too bad.
yeah, it
Wasn't too
wasn't a bad
shabby.
game.
But that '89 grand final had everything in it. It was that era of footy where it was hard and fast and tough and all the hallmarks and it was just brilliant. And even the run up to it and some of those finals where Ablett Senior got off the leash and almost bringing a tear to my eye.
Yeah, it's one of those. I guess that'll always be one of those disappointing things for Cats fans. And '89 is, I think every Cats fan would still agree as well, despite the result. It's arguably the best grand final that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that it will always be for us the one that we lost, unfortunately. So it's such this incredible game. We all think so fondly of it,
I know.
but the net result, we try and cast that one away.
Yeah, and a team of champions versus a champion team. But gosh, give it another 5 minutes, and I reckon the war of attrition would have fallen our way. But
yeah, I think you might be right. Though of course my memories aren't too great when it comes to that one. I don't want to upset you with this. I was born in '89, so it's I've watched the game plenty of times over the years since, but memories from the time a little bit light on for fairly obvious reasons. I think.
Fair call.
But I guess, what did it mean for you when 2007 rolled along and the success finally came? The drought had been broken.
Look, it's I mean, a lot of 2007 goes back to, it was 05, wasn't it? Bloody Nick Davis.
I don't mention his name, but yeah, that person.
Yeah, sorry.
Everyone else can. I just refuse. Ben insists on one of these days bringing that said person on the show, and I've warned him that it will possibly be the worst piece of content we ever make because I won't be able to address him properly. But
yeah, I just have to
we'll see what happens.
It back to that. And I mean, that, I think in that year they showed just all the signs of some greatness, and but they were so young and they went too far too early, I think. And that's why 06 was a bit of a disappointment because the expectations were high, and of course there were a multitude of things that happened in that year. And I really give the Brains Trust credit for how they handled that, because most other teams up until that point had just got rid of their coaches and stuff like that. And I guess we've seen since that under high expectations, and when they don't hit it, Damien Hardwick, they took the same tack where they reviewed it and they
stuck with it.
You're the right person, and even Bucks with the Pies, they did that review and he stuck around, and they did, they got to a grand final
and they got so close in that case. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that I was more disappointed in 06. I think, where is this going? And I didn't see 07 coming at all, really, because there was just too much happening, too much chatter around about all sorts of things. But remember, it's and lots of rumours flying around. It was pretty nasty then, actually. It wasn't a great year. But remember, I think it was the first 5 games of 07, wasn't it? Well, we were 3-3 or 2-3.
2-3, and then we played, I think it was Richmond in round 6.
Belted us, didn't they? North belted us.
And Chappie came out and spoke to the media afterwards.
Yeah, he did. And isn't that the famous, Scarlo took everyone to the farm, was it? They had a bit of a chat. I think
I think there might have been a bit of an honesty session afterwards as well.
Come to Jesus moment, and
obliterated Richmond the next week.
They just and who saw that coming? No one saw that coming. So that was pretty gratifying, and we just rode that wave. Really, it was terrific, and it was interesting. I spoke to someone who. When I went to the preliminary final that year against
Collingwood,
the preliminary finals are really, as we know, the purest games, and that was our nervous moment, and I was there, and I was just distraught and nervous, and Big Otto got us through. But I'd spoken to someone who, I don't even know how I know him. I met him somehow just through work, actually, and he sat in the box with Bomber, and he was just saying that on that night they couldn't work out what was going on, because Harley dropped the mark. He would have swallowed up 99 times out of 100, and someone was on the wrong flank, or people were all over the shop, and they just looked, and we saw it. They just looked all over the place and not settled, and we almost paid the price for that. But he said in the grand final against Port, we knew pretty quickly we were on. They were on. They looked good, and it's funny, like you can you can kind of tell that. And I think when you've watched a few games, often you get that feeling of, are they on? They're looking pretty good. And I thought, we saw that at the grand final the other day. So it's been a pretty good wave. And disappointment, but still better disappointment. Can you have better disappointment than most other people had disappointment?
Yeah.
getting to prelims, yes, there's disappointment, but it's that age-old thing. Would you rather have these wins and at least be up there and attempting versus, a
miserable year?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we set the benchmark so high and we all fall into that trap. We should have done better. And we look back towards it and then, we're probably much happier about it now because we've seen the pathway, which was just magnificent this year, just magnificent.
Yeah, it is one of those weird things that when you are so successful for such a long time, your expectations naturally change. Like you as a supporter, I'm sure internally, obviously we would hear all the messaging about, no, we're not bottoming out. We're going to top up and we're going to have another dip. And obviously that external noise, and it would go through the Geelong supporter base as well. It's like, okay, well, how long can you keep doing this for? Joel's about to go, which now ultimately he has. Hawkins, that crew that's kind of been there, the ones that were the young guys when the 07, 9, 11 crew were starting to wind down, and now themselves starting to wind down. You think, oh, how long can this last? But what we've really come to learn is like the cattle was there. They managed them incredibly well to keep them fit, and the game plan was changed in just the right way to suit those strengths and utilise each and every one of the players in the best possible capacity, and look what it got us.
I watched the 07 final, grand final again the other day, and I just, like a lot of people when they say, oh, Richmond plays this game and the Fast and Furious and all, whoever, and everyone's forgotten. I mean,
2007.
Kamikaze, they called it kamikaze style back in 07 when that finally clicked in and they just ran helter-skelter. And to watch some of those clips is just breathtaking, and it was just exciting footy, because up until then it was Swans and West Coast
with that slow,
really dour, and they were the ones winning and up there, and it was flooding, and even Andrew Demetriou said footy's horrible and all of that, and I think that's where Bomber and his team were geniuses, because the only way to beat it is to
go through it,
go fast and go crazy. And I think sometimes change the game style, but you've got to have the cattle there as well, and they certainly had the cattle there, and they were starting to mature enough, but they were pretty damn quick. They moved pretty quick, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly like to pick your brain a little bit when it comes to this commentary around Richmond and contrasting that to the 2007 Geelong, because yeah, we do hear that language about frantic, and I hear what you're saying, but I can't help but wonder, though. I mean, I guess there is still quite a difference between those two teams. Yes, both teams played a very fast game, but Richmond's was, we don't care how we get it there, just knock it forward, kick it forward, handball, whatever. Yeah. Whereas Geelong, it was fast, it was frantic, but there was still a purity to it. There was more traditional.
They took risks. Yeah. That was risk-taking footy. Like the handballs, they knew they wanted to get it to someone and
just get it in the area and trust them.
It didn't always work, but they were willing to keep moving at it and take that risk.
Yeah.
And it's risk and reward, really. I mean, when it turns over badly. Probably today it turns over even more because they're used to running back a lot quicker than they probably did then. But, you look at the likes of, just the people they had in the back line, and Scarlett as the general. And, I don't think he's underrated, but boy, gee, he changed the way a lot of defenders played, and the way he came up the ground, and he could do you one-on-one.
An attacking fullback.
Absolutely. And the creativity of Mackie and Josh Hunt, who could, just pinpoint it from, 60, 70 metres, like with that big booming left foot. Just you've got to put the cattle together and do what you can with them. And that's the sign of good coaching.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot that we see. Like, I think that 2022 premiership does evoke a lot of that kind of 2007. Like, it was a faster game again. They kind of built up a bit of speed to their play. But at the same time, they were still hitting the targets. It was still a skill-based game, as opposed to that frantic sort of thing. And I was really, I mean, outside of the obvious as a Geelong supporter, really excited to see the success there. I was thrilled to see a game style that was all the things that Richmond were doing and that people loved about that game, the thing that kind of helped, continue to that push forward mentality, but also with a higher skill component.
Yeah, currently
Yeah.
the current, yeah, absolutely, and still a defensive mindset. I mean,
Yeah.
it's defense first, but let's attack as well. And as we know, you've got to get both right. And it's very easy to sit in the cheap seats and say you just got to get it right.
Oh, for sure.
But it's there's a lot of moving parts into that, and you got the cattle to do it. And I'm really wrapped that we've regenerated, and I like the way that they've pinging players who have already got 2 or 3 years in the system, and
Yeah.
that's changed the ball game a bit too. I think that's going to have a big effect, and all teams are probably going to look at doing that.
Yeah, it's certainly something. I mean, obviously Geelong's got its recent examples with Tanner Bruin and Ollie Henry, and even Jack Bowes to a lesser extent because he's got a few more years under his belt than those two. But you do see these signs of and I guess it kind of fuels that conversation that we see in the background about the strong teams getting stronger and the bottom teams potentially cellar dwelling for arguably longer. But it is an interesting model because we are seeing that these guys will be attracted to these top teams, and Geelong or whoever it happens to be is not having to. There's no risk in the draft that goes with it anymore. You already know what you're getting. You can already make a more educated call. Yes, it might cost you a little bit more to get there through draft picks, or in the case of to make Ollie Henry work, we ultimately had to forfeit a player who, at the time, I desperately did want to see gone in Cooper Stevens. But you know what you're getting. There's something that you've got metrics, you've got data, you've got vision, you've got all those sorts of things that you won't always have when it comes to a draftee.
And they've also played against men, and
yes.
Some of the youngins, they're all superstars at 18 and playing against themselves, but not all of them, as we know, can cut it against the big fellas. And
when they take on someone 30 kilos heavier.
Yeah, but I mean, I also I like the fact that we really cherry pick, the Tom Stewarts and the Atkins. And these guys. And I mean, I know other teams do it as well. I mean, I don't watch the other teams as much as ours, but it's great to see people who have talent and have just taken a little while to mature, and they get a crack at it. And that's what I mean, that's the romantic in me. I love that in footy. Again, growing up in the country, there's some players playing in in the Wimmera League up there, and I moved to Hamilton in the Western Border League, and they're guns. They're absolute guns. And I just don't know if they get, once they're out of school and there's no pathways and stuff like that. I mean, it's probably better now than it used to be in my day, but in my day, they used to come down and pick people and just go bang, bang, bang. Okay, come down to Essendon and have a tryout. It was that rudimentary. But there are some really guns out there that there are diamonds in the rough that do get missed, and I love it when at least they get picked up. And Tom Stewart, what a story.
Yeah, and I think we see things like the mid-season draft emerge. I think addressing that exact scenario up to a point where there are people that are lighting it up in whether it's the VFL or interstate or even just some of the local leagues sometimes, as you say, and they get this golden opportunity they may not have gotten otherwise. And I think, while the model wasn't there, it's, I think, again, established by a lot of what Geelong was doing in that, like the 2006, 7 to 10 sort of window where we picked up. I mean, Harry Taylor was a couple years older. Podsy Adley, who'd had several chances and had kind of fallen
20
by the
years
wayside.
older.
Yeah, and I mean and obviously you've mentioned a bunch of more recent examples as well. Again, before that mid-season draft was a thing. Geelong have been doing it for a long time, and certainly with a great deal more success than any other clubs. I don't think any other clubs were doing it as often, but also I think Geelong was doing it better. I mean, I guess the data would show that too. But I think what Geelong has proven through their approach over those years, I'm sure played some part in what the AFL then ultimately went to do with the mid-season draft. And we are seeing players. Collingwood's got some really great examples recently.
Yep.
As well, I mean, Carlton had a few that they've, unfortunately, some have worked, some haven't. But there's a number of players that have emerged through the mid-season draft that have then become fixtures of their starting 22s. I mean, that proves that it works, right? And highlights your exact point.
Who was the guy from Freo who came on and he killed it? Just was fantastic.
Specifically for Freo.
Yeah, he played in Freo, and his name escapes me. But he came in and where has this guy been? Like he was just names off the top of my head.
like like a few years back now.
Yeah.
Broke his leg, went to Gold Coast as well. Michael Barlow.
Michael Barlow, yeah. Great example of that in action, and but it also means isn't it part of the culture of the club too to be okay? That's part of your strategy. If that's going to be part of the strategy, then you put things in place to look out and have scouts and be willing to take those risks, and knowing where you've got a gap and then fill that gap with someone and how you assess them. So it comes back down to the quality of the club and the people in it, but also your strategy and your plan. Looking ahead, because if you've got no plan, you just kind of flounder and you just grab at stuff, and your supporters go nuts on something, so you just jump over there, and I think you've just got to know yourself. And I think one thing that we as supporters, not all the time, but 85% of the time, depending if we got been belted and look on Twitter, but really we have that saying, in Wells we trust, and
for good reason too.
For very good reason, and hopefully the statue is being built as we speak. And but it's not just him; it's the whole everyone around him, and
you've got to have the structure.
They're all moving in the one direction, and I think that you can't ask for more.
Yeah.
And if that was a business, it is a business, but if that was a company, that'd be a really successful company.
And so let's lean into companies and those sorts, and start to hone in on your professional life as well, because we've obviously spoken a lot of time talking footy, and we'll absolutely get to some footy as well. But there's a whole bunch of really huge pillars of your life that do and don't intermingle with the AFL world. There's a lot of people who know you for some of your PR agency work. You were writing in journalism as well for some for regional Victorian newspapers. Where did it all begin though?
Well, I will go back to sort of, I guess, Warwick Nabil, because that's my dad was a bank manager. We lived in the middle of town, very small town, 3,000 people. We lived next door to the newspaper office, the Warwick Nabil Herald, and I went to sleep 2 nights a week with the printing press rhythmically turning in the
does that help with the sleep, or
you do get used to it. It was pretty loud.
It's like
and then
sheep.
I used to go in and fold papers. They did it manually. You'd fold the papers and then they'd put the guillotine down. So you could say I had ink in the veins then. And so then I got a job as a cadet there. I didn't have to go to uni for that. I learned on the job, and the editor said on my first day, I want a back page lead in 30 minutes, and I don't care how you get it, just get it. And I didn't even know what a back page lead is, and that's the main sports story, of course. And you just learn on the job. You literally get thrown into it, and it was great because I got to write on all sorts of things, because when you're in a country newspaper, you've got to find your own news. You can't. Whereas if you're in a city paper, they tell you that's what you're
silver platter.
And the bigger the paper, the more you're told what to do. But when the editor goes on holidays and you've been in the game for about 18 months or whatever, and he says, as he's walking out the door, this paper has never not gone to press in, I don't know how many, 100 years or 80 years or whatever. There's a lot of pressure. So you got to find your own news. So I guess from that, storytelling was my big thing, and I got used to it. And I used to write a music column before I did that, and I was big in, really active in basketball, and I wrote all the basketball write-ups and stuff like that. So I was always writing, and I did a lot of sport, and I did cover the footy, because footy's everything in the country. And eventually I had to stop playing because it was a bit hard to play and report. Otherwise I'd give myself best on ground every time. So
maybe you should have stuck with it then.
I should have.
You might have been picked up by the Bombers or someone else, right?
For the seniors, so I got a good insight as to when someone was injured. I actually knew. So there was a bit of a balance of what I could and could not say.
Might have found yourself on a club radar if you kept giving yourself the 3 votes each week. They would have gone, who is this guy? We'll have to come down and have a look.
That's right.
They won't connect the dots that the author is the same as the player, but
under 16s and then reserves, and then sort of kind of had to give it up. But and then went to Hamilton on the paper there, which is a bigger paper, and great footy town, or it's a city actually. Hamilton is a great footy city, and you got the 2 teams, Imperials, Hamilton and Imperials, in the one town, and the town's divided as to who they like, of course, as you'd expect. And as the chief football writer, you had to say when they played each other who's going to win and make that big prediction. You just had to watch which pub you went into that night, because people take their footy pretty seriously in Hamilton, which was a lot of fun. And,
write your report and then maybe just go home and not venture out for the night.
Yeah. Sort of. Unfortunately, no dial-in in those times, so still had to see people.
Yeah, okay,
pizza on the way home. And but that was loads of fun. And just I was every Saturday going to footy matches. The Mount Gambier, and unfortunately there was 4 teams in Mount Gambier, so I had to always do a fair bit of driving. So from there I went into PR, and I came down to Melbourne and joined a big PR firm down here, and did that for a number of years. And then I've started my own with a colleague and a company called Spark Communications.
Yep.
And we ran Spark for 8 years, sold it to a guy called Harold Mitchell, who's one of the big players in the media and marketing world, and did another 2 years. So did that for 10. And but while I was doing that in 07, I started blogging, and I think I did my first podcast in about 09. I still don't know how the hell I would have done it, but it did get out there. It was a bit
they were
clunky.
Definitely a thing. So
it was clunky though.
Sure.
It was the way to do it wasn't great, and I've got a current one now, which I've done. I've got 250 episodes on, which is Reputation Revolution. But I've always loved that side, social media, and I wanted to explore that more. And I just by doing stuff, just by blogging and being on Twitter in the heyday of Twitter, when it was actually a lovely collegiate community. It was a warm and fuzzy place to be. That changed. All of that changed my life. So I ended up, because I knew about social media and I was out there in public on it then and teaching people and writing about it, I got a book deal with one of the world's biggest business book publishers. So I wrote a book called Micro Domination, and then I got an agent and I did 50 speaking gigs for nothing. And then one day an agent was in the audience and he said, "Do you want a paid gig?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I became a paid speaker, even though I hated the concept of speaking. I just did it until I enjoy it. Now I enjoy it. And so just by doing all those things and what you're doing now with the show and stuff like that becoming your own media channel, I guess, made a big difference in my life, and took it in a different way. And today I sort of, now there's content and social media, and there's still PR and media publicity and everything. And I, for my sins, join all those dots and try and stay up to date with everything. And I work with professional experts, thought leaders, business owners to build their personal brand. And I do coaching. I coach them. So rather than on the tools and run an agency with, 10s, 20, 30 people, which I've done in the past, no overheads now, pretty lean and mean, and do coaching. And I've just launched a new business called Credible Authority Academy, which will be online training and that side of things. So courses and online courses. So just always been evolving, but always been around media, marketing, communications, and more recently content and social media.
So, I mean, I can connect the dots between PR and then how that kind of developed into the social media. And I mean, there's, especially as that became more and more prevalent, there's a pretty logical sort of connection there. Yeah. What was it about PR in the first place that caught your eye? I mean, different pockets of the world. I mean, certainly there's a lot of people who watch and listen to this show know, and anyone who's just watching in the background and can see all the video game paraphernalia in the background knows I do a lot there. And that is a very, very common thing for anyone who's kind of somewhat prominent or got a decent platform in the media space. There is, I guess, with kind of the more traditional media, the written word stuff, starting to kind of lose a little bit of its luster in that particular space. You get more and more people that will then rise through the ranks and then find themselves in communications or PR or something along those sort of lines. So, like, I do understand where those things connect, but getting in the first place, well, I guess what prompted the decision to go down the PR path?
In those days, so PR today is, media coverage is just one part of it. I'd know PR people who wouldn't even talk to a journalist or a producer at all. It's just so broad.
Absolutely.
And it's a really hard gig if you're across everything, because there's social and content and influencer marketing and events and sponsorships and all of that.
Yeah, it's teams these days rather than individuals.
Oh, has to be. You have to, work out where it's good to know a lot of the things across and join the dots, but ultimately you probably have to specialize a little bit more. But in the days, I mean, I loved writing so much. I was writing so much. I wanted to give journalism a bit of a miss, and so I could concentrate on my other writing, and then go into PR and knowing at that point it was well, I actually didn't know what it was about anyway, but I thought it was about media publicity, and it was newsletter writing and publicity is what I did, media releases and all that. So I ended up doing a lot of writing, and a lot of newsletters, and in the days where you had to print them, and a long gestation period for a newsletter, whereas now you can bang one up and get it out all in the day. So it was really about the media publicity. I knew media pretty well, very well, and I think if you're doing media publicity and you've worked in the media, you know what a good story is, and you know how to talk to journalists because you've been in the cauldron on it. So in the newsrooms, so it was either that or I go from a 3 times a week newspaper in the Hamilton Spectator, which was a brilliant paper, and I really loved it there. The next thing is you either go into TV, radio, but it was probably going to be more like a Herald Sun or The Age. That's where you aim at, and they love them from the country because, again, they're self-sufficient. They've been running their own show for a lot of it. So, and I just took the turn. It was just really it was a bit of a zigzag, but not too much. I mean, I used all the skills that I had and everything, and I guess that in the media they call that on the dark side. So I moved into the dark side from that. So in the dark.
Look, we can look at the dark side, and I guess that I think that gets thrown around too casually as far as I'm concerned, as someone who kind of still works on that media side and does see it from that, like in the games scene. And I don't 100% agree with the label that gets kind of branded on anyone who does make that jump, because it's a pretty logical one. It's a transferable skills and application in a different sort of way that's really, really fascinating, and you still get to work with these people too.
Yeah, and a lot of journos have had to move because they're cutting, unfortunately cutting newsrooms. So
written word is labouring a little bit.
Yeah, it's just, and they have to go across. I mean, the thing is, often a journo will go, because they've been exposed to PR people, they think it's all about media, when it's not. And I think, if they've got an open mind, they'll do well. If they've got a closed mind, if they go into PR, they might struggle a little bit. And a lot of them, think they're, I know some that think they're above it, so they don't really ever take to it too well. And I guess the other part of it is that, the thing with the media is that, now they can train people. I don't like the spin doctor side of things. I've never liked that as a tag. There are people particularly in government and maybe high-end corporate where they spin the message and everything. They're not PR people. They're media advisors, and that's what they do. But I think that's the wrong way to go. But that's the way it is. So that's what a lot of people see PR people as, and that's why it's a dark art. And with those people who are spinning and massaging the message and all of that, it's a game. It's a game, and it's not a game that I'm willing to play.
No, and I really appreciate that. And I guess an interesting aspect of that PR work is that you intersected with a range of companies that do themselves also intersect with the AFL, from Telstra, Ford, Coca-Cola, Coles. There's several more as well that have all at various different points kind of crossed over with the AFL. But I mean, maybe you didn't necessarily work with them in that sort of capacity, but I mean, what was it like working with some of these gigantic corporations?
Yeah, well, we positioned Spark to really, so that was in my Spark days, we really positioned Spark to work with big companies and do a lot with it. We had a second company called Ignition, which was experience-based marketing, so we could get out and do stunts and have street teams and do all that sort of stuff. So we did a lot in sports sponsorship leverage. So we worked with the Grand Prix for 5 years, working for Foster's. They were the title sponsor. So that was a lot of fun. We basically did all the, while the Grand Prix people did the more teams and the event, we did more the social side of stuff around it, which made sense. We worked with CUB then and Carlton Draft, and that was very directly into football. So we did have quite a bit to do with footy then. We created a club for the media. I've forgotten what it was called now. We had created a club for the media, and at the start of the season, we'd get all the media in, and because they were our audience, and and worked with them. We started a thing called the Carlton Draftsman. I'm wondering what that was actually now. And when there was a Brownlow party, we had a Crownlow party
Yep.
for Crown, and so we were always
played.
on the edges because they were sponsoring and stuff like that. So we had a lot to do with beer, and the V8 supercars, which was VB at the time, and Foster's with Grand Prix, and all of those ones. So it's just it was good because when you sponsor a we work with ANZ for the World Swimming Titles when it was out here. So as a sponsor, you get all that stuff and signage, and you get hospitality and tickets. We don't do any of that. That's kind of sponsorship management. We say, well, now once you've signed the deal, and hopefully we had a say early on, not all the time, but because you want to get something out of it then, and then it's about leveraging it and doing even more than what they're doing in leveraging. And so you need access to talent. You need access to the, if it's footy, you need access to players. You need access to tickets for competition, media competitions and things like that. So anything you can do to create properties around that property. So with Foster's and Grand Prix, we create a series of properties and events and parties and things around the Grand Prix and the Grand Prix name that we're allowed to do, and we built them year upon year. So we had a thing called the Rev Up Party, we had the Rev Down Party, we had
anything possible,
all of those things, and might feel like a bit of glitz and glamour on the outside, but not really.
But I'd also I guess at the core of the whole thing, and I guess it's the same for really anything when it comes to the social media pillars and those sorts of things now, is it's about engagement. It's how can you engage people in the brand, with the companies? How can you get people thinking? How can you get at the forefront of mind? It's it's the heart and soul of these sorts of things at the end of the day, is building association.
Absolutely, and social's really good to add that layer on top, and then do your own content as well. So I mean, gosh, if we were doing all of that in those days, we just would have tripled in size, because then you do the events, the media, the influencers, the socials around it, your own content. I mean, all of that is in the PR remit.
And so as we move into the social side of it a little bit more, what have you learnt the most from, because as you say, you were really engaged right in there at the very beginning in a lot of different ways. What were some of the great things that you learnt over the journey about how to best form those communications, form those interactions, get that engagement going, and then how are you able to translate that to the parties that you would then work with?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit more of a purist, so I like the idea of companies and their people being out there and open and starting conversations and adding value and all of that sort of stuff. And that was always a hard sell, and it took quite a few years before companies were really prepared to do that. And the bigger companies really didn't want to do it because they got layers of hierarchy and everything has to be approved, so they didn't want to do that. It was the smaller businesses that went out and did it, and did it really,
They're more receptive.
Really well. Yeah, and they were more nimble, and they were okay about it. And those that got it, they really just got it, and they grew and they built up good followings and stuff. Obviously the algorithm since has really stuffed things around, but in the early days, the algorithm was pretty generous because they wanted you to build up your following, and
because it helps build the platform itself.
That's basically, we built the platform. So. And Twitter then was really at the coalface. A lot of people wanted to deal with companies, and there was a bit of, we've now got the power. I think there was a saying where the influence now shifted from the hands of a few to the fingertips of many. And I always loved that as a saying. And so I like to get into the psychology of it and give people's reasons for it, not just let's jump on because it's sexy, but these are the reasons. And you have to change as a business if you're going to do it properly. There's a few things in place. You can't do what you've always done on social media. Everything you've done in the past, you're going to have to rethink your communications. And, I had a lot of challenging conversations with that. And that's probably why I end up speaking more, because people were, there are a lot of people that were really interested in it. Business directors, CEOs, all of that sort of stuff. So that's why I ended up doing the speaking and educating people on it. And I loved doing the education of it.
And I guess when you were having these speaking gigs, what were the sort of questions that would come from those? What were people, I guess, most eager to pick your brain further about? What were some of the more even potentially contentious points among some of those that were coming in.
What if someone says something bad about us? was always one.
Of course, yeah.
They're always, most people, business people, executives particularly, they're always worried about reputation.
Yeah.
And if someone said something bad about them, and I said, well, the whole thing there is you've got an opportunity now to talk back to them, because people actually liked it. And I had so many case studies lined up, and I used to collect, and I still do, case studies of people and brands and businesses and leaders doing things well. And when you see it in action, where they actually do it well and they interact, the public like it. The public like it when, a heavy hitter talks to them.
Gets down in the weeds again.
Yeah, absolutely. They love it. They love it. And I look at it with and I think the football clubs, if we turn it back to football, I think they do a magnificent job. And I know that, I probably know the Geelong ones pretty well as well. And I've, spoken, not that I taught them anything, but I've been down there to talk to them about it and enjoyed that experience. And they're just doing some really great stuff. And all of the clubs, you do see some of their stuff. And it's clearly that the social media teams or the content teams have got the imprimatur, they've got the flexibility, or they're allowed the license, to go off and do some stuff. They know their guardrails, and they just get it out and punch it out, and they do a really good job. And that takes a little bit of there's a bit of risk on the part of the top echelon,
of course, because these things can blow back in your face sometimes.
Well, you can't sit there and have the CEO and all those guys. You can't have them vetting everything. You just couldn't do it. It's in real time. And if you look at what's happened in the NBA and sport in America, they were really early out of the blocks. It was one of the basketball clubs. I can't think. Maybe the Phoenix. Not too sure. And early days, they had a box for bloggers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were one of the first, if not the first, in NBA to do it. And the media didn't like it. I bet. The media hated it.
These people are trying to usurp us, and you're giving them the platform to do so.
Hated it. They looked at them with disdain, and it was. I remember, looking at it, and this became a bit of a case study. And again, I used to follow these case studies, and it was just fantastic. And hearing the head of digital or the head of marketing speak about this is why we do it. They're fans. They love it. They bring a passion, and they talk reality and what they say. And they're not always going to be generous and kind to us if we're losing, but that's what fans talk about. So they ignite the conversation probably more than the media. And some of them had pretty big followings, and that they were the kind of the early days. And I remember I was in LA in 2011, a thing called Blog World. Could you believe it? Blog World and New Media Expo. There you go. That's how old it was.
No, I mean, I still know these sorts of things. You've got
using those
in the YouTuber side. You've got your VidCons and those sorts of things. They're all there. There's a convention for everything.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And what I found out, by going to somewhere for kind of like 3 days and seeing where all the heavy hitters were, it was very obvious to me back in 2011 that this is going to be these people are building micro media companies. They're not a blogger. They're a micro media proprietor, and they were all starting to create. Now people are creating shows and stuff, but in those days they're starting to build personal brands, and they're looking at the metrics and all of that sort of stuff, and that's where I really thought that's where this influence thing was going to be, and that's what my book Micro Domination was about. It was kind of about, we didn't call the world influencer marketing, but that's really what it was about at the time. And sports have been pretty much at the forefront, and the AFL social media teams are fantastic. And I really enjoy the way they just let loose now. I think it's just a lot of fun, and it's my daughter's mad Geelong, brought her up well, and
good.
She plays, and she knows all the players, all the partners, all the kids.
That's a level of knowledge.
And because when she was young, I mean, she's 23 now, but in her teens, she was doing this, and that was her first entree into football.
Yeah.
She'd watch the games, but it was as much about behind the scenes, and there's this emotional connection that will probably never be broken, and it just translates then into the games as well, and the players, and we get excited about the draft, and it's fantastic, and really loving the women's game as well, watching it with her, and she tests me, do I know the players? And now I do know them, and she's wrapped.
Cool.
And I've really enjoyed that this year. And, the girls had a really great year as well. And I just love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think one of those huge things, I think, on the kind of consumer side of the fence is it's about feeling like you're a part of it. Not that there's this invisible wall between you and whether it's the club or the personality that you like, that you follow, or whatever the case is. People want to feel like they're a part of that. And as you've said yourself, the social teams do a fantastic job of that. The media teams are getting there in terms of the way they embrace the influencers who then can help bring them there, because people have attached themselves to whoever that influence or personality happens to be, because it's you can get lost when, and I don't mean to be throwing shade at any of the big companies, whether it's Channel 7 with their TV coverage or the Herald Sun with their written word, but it's especially on the kind of paper side, it's harder to, you'll have a different person addressing different things at different times, so you kind of focused on the brand, which doesn't, there's no personality necessary to the brand, because the personality of the individual writers in these smaller micro spaces you're talking about, it's centered on, if we focus on the hoop show sort of thing, it's Ben, it's me, and you can kind of, hopefully for viewers and listeners out there, you're attaching yourself to us and the content we're making, and it's like these sorts of bridges are being formed, and it helps you feel like you're closer to the personality. It helps you feel like you're closer to the club. There's walls being broken down. It's a really fascinating sort of path that we're all going on.
Yeah, and it's passion. It's this is passion media, and you can't beat enthusiasm and passion, and shared values and shared interests, and that's what builds bonds and communities and that sort of things. And that's what I've loved from social, is the communities that have been built from it, the connections made. I mean, a lot of my great friends are from the early days of Twitter.
Yeah.
And you'd go to a tweet up and you'd only identify someone from their Twitter handle, and you'd talk to them for the first time probably ever, and you've probably been talking to them online for a year, and then you finally get to meet them. It's like being at meeting 5 or 6 sort of stuff, and I always loved that. But I think the other thing, when I talked earlier about being open and a little bit more informal and friendly and less guarded, right? And all that, that cuts across everything, and we see it in footy clubs. I mean, remember when, and Ross Lyon's probably a lot more relaxed now, but in that 2010, 2009, 2010, 11, when in that heyday, and remember they went into the bubble and they wouldn't talk to anyone, and it just didn't engender well for the fans. There was always a bit of tension with the fans, and you're in the grand final and you're not talking to anyone, you're not embracing it. And I go back to Nathan Buckley and the Pies. Remember when they got in the grand final, and that year where he opened up,
that was a huge difference. It was unbelievable.
Huge. And the Pies got people loved him. They actually really loved him when I hate the Pies. And all of a sudden they're not too bad, they're approachable, they're friendly, they're a bit of fun. We saw, behind the scenes. And that's what we want. We want to see we don't want a veneer now. We want to see behind the veneer and be taken behind the scenes, whether we're fans of that team or not. And that really showed to me. When it starts from the top, then that
filters through.
It filtered through. Again, others had permission to talk and to do things, and of course they're all doing it now. They're all on social, and they're being, they're clearly, been taught a little bit, and media training.
Yeah, media training. Yeah.
The best ones that do it are just really good. They have a bit of fun, and we get to see a side of Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah,
that's different, and that resonates with us. We love the guy for it, for having a bit of fun.
I mean, I don't want to put a definitive number on it, but even 5-10 years ago, if the antics of Jeremy Cameron during the grand final and even the aftermath were bubbled to the surface, then I don't know how. I mean, not that he's done anything horrific or anything like that. Like, no. Put a premiership medal on a cow and cracked a beer mid game and that sort of. It's the fun of the moment. That would often get lost, but because people have these opportunities to connect and to learn about them and to just understand who they are as a person first and foremost.
Yeah.
it makes you instantly more understanding when he cracks a beer during during the game, or his cow runs away with his premiership medallion.
It's wonderful, and we see that behind the scenes, and again, you got the wives and the girlfriends and the kids, and you just get a good feeling of who you like and who you follow, and it builds an emotional connection with a club that you've already got emotional connection with anyway, and it just makes it more well-rounded, and I just think you can't beat it. And let's face it, footy's a high-interest category. We're interested in it, so it's it's not going to go away. So you may as well embrace it, and the clubs have, and I think that's. And people are going to make mistakes on social. We see it, and hey, that's life. Yeah. That's life.
But I think at the same time, if you have formed this personable sort of relationship out there, and you do make that error, it is far easier, I think, and without having found myself in that situation yet, so I'm projecting a little bit, but I feel like it must be far easier to be able to potentially redeem yourself in the eyes of the fans or the media if you've been really grounded in the first place.
Yeah, people will come into bat for you.
Yeah,
they will. You build that audience. You build that sense of trust and credibility, and absolutely, see it all the time.
Now, we're obviously talking before that you do a lot of paid spots as well to help with corporations and several other entities as well in terms of their growth in this space. I'd be remiss though if I didn't try and get a few little tips and tricks for anyone who's watching or listening today who might be looking to kind of enter the space more. What would be some of the I guess first piece of advice that you would offer anyone if they're looking to engage more in this space, to build up a platform, to when it comes to social media interactivity, those sorts of things? And if need be, I'll pay afterwards to do my fair share if you need, for anyone on behalf of everyone watching and listening now.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's two things. One, if it's on part of a business, that's probably a little bit different than,
sure.
If it's a passion project, you just do it. I think the key is to, it's a noisy world. How are you going to differentiate yourself? What's your point of difference? And, and don't try and emulate someone else. Your point of differentiation is yourself. So even if you're doing it for a business, we do business with people, not logos. So It's all about the owners and putting themselves out there. And I think going, are you educating? Are you provoking thought? Are you inspiring people with stories? You just got to pick your formats. I think the interview thing works really, really well. Today, people are creating, as I said earlier, shows is the trend I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And their video, their audio, they're often live streamed, if you're comfortable with doing that, and then it's chopped up and shared across multiple channels. And so I think if someone's doing a podcast only, that's great. But you can use tools such as Google Meet. I use a tool called Riverside FM.
Yeah, Riverside is fantastic.
And you've got the video afterwards. It's a pretty good quality, and then you can chop it up into snippets and then share across the socials, TikTok, whatever your poison is, or all of them, and that helps get word out about the show, and it gives you enough to get out there and do it. So but if you're a writer, if you don't want to be in front of a camera, don't force yourself. Write. If you're a writer and you love writing,
lean into your strengths, right?
Passion, do that, and put your heart and soul into it. It's not, even if you're doing it as part of a business or a social cause, if it's a social cause, you're going to be more passionate about it. If you're doing a part of your business, a lot of people who are in business, they get besotted with themselves and their brand, and people aren't interested in, probably apart from the cats, they can talk about their brand all the time.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And if you're in, fashion or something like that, where there's a high interest category, again, as I used that phrase before, but, understand who your audience is. You're a micro media company, and you need to know your audience. And if the media know one thing, whether it's a radio station or a small magazine, they know their audience, and they write or they broadcast for that audience in mind. You might not know it beautifully at the start, but you'll get better and better and better. And, you don't have to say, it's for guys 22 to 25 and who live in drive these cars. You don't have to get down to demographics, but it's more about the mindset, what's of interest to them, what'll stop their thumb, and really get amongst those people and understand them. And if you do build an audience, maybe once a year, I've done this. I've had clients do this, and I know others who've done it. They survey. So you build your audience, you survey it, and then you'll
Collect
get
data.
some really good insights from that of what people like and they don't like. And so you give more of what they like, and that's how you build it. But that's again, it's incremental. You've got to be in it for the long haul. These things just take time, and the ones that are last person standing tend to do pretty well. And I guess the absolute gold is email. Don't rely on social media. Social's great to get the word out and to interact with people. Try and find a way to get people on an email list. And you might have to give an incentive of some kind. You might write an ebook, or you might have some signed memorabilia, or something that people, whether it's a competition or however you do it, maybe extra content that they can't get anywhere else. Get them on that email list, and because then eventually you'll be able to have maybe subscriptions or other products and services that you want to sell or whatever. But your email list is your gold. So I know we've been talking about social and live streaming and all that exciting stuff.
No, but I mean,
email is the gun. It's the one.
It's really that model, and I mean, there's ways that these things get used in kind of predatory is probably not the right word, but in different sort of business. I mean, we see the rise of subscription models in all sorts of different, whether it's television, whether it's, again, going back to my thing, games. There's a whole bunch of different things, and it's all about the subscription model. And one of the great things for those platform holders is quite often someone will subscribe, and that's maybe because they're keen on one particular product. If we focus on kind of the TV shows, the Netflix style thing, they're keen for one thing, they subscribe, and then you kind of remain in that ecosystem. And so there is obviously the predatory model, which is great. Now I'm just siphoning your money for some undefined period. But there's also the opportunity to then present that person with, hey, have you seen this? Have you tried this? And it's all within our ecosystem, but it keeps you immersed for longer. And yes, obviously there's, in those other financial sort of lenses, yes, there's opportunities to extract more, but it helps build engagement, it helps build connectedness, it helps build that community, and I think really, really works well for those platforms.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And that can happen on the small scale too.
Absolutely, and you can go,
the Patreon model is huge for that.
Super niche. I mean, people follow, the personalities, and we follow people. I can't overemphasize that. And a friend of mine who's a top marketing blogger in the States, Mark Schaefer, and he just reached out because I've had him on my podcast before, but he's written a new book about the power of community and how it's the last form of marketing. And I'm a big believer in community. And when you see it really done properly, and people are, again, there's shared interest, shared values around a common cause, social helps us bring people together, but you need other ways to do it. And if you if you can do it face to face or whatever, that's even better. But it's community is, and building not just you to them as the leader, but then them introduce people to each other, and they start talking about your show together. That's when you're starting to build a bit of a sense of community, and really try to identify the super fans, the real fans, and give them a platform, and highlight them, bring them up as well, shine the light on others as well. It's just a really powerful technique to be using and thinking about.
And I'm sure there's a lot more advice out there for people when it comes to the podcast, like in terms of things you're presenting through your own podcast as well. So before we kind of cycle back to the very Geelong sort of focus things, we better make sure to plug that one for anyone who's tuning in on podcast feeds right now to potentially jump across and check that one out. So what should people be looking out for?
It's called Reputation Revolution. The best website is reputationrevolution.co, and it's really about professional personal branding. And under that, there's a lot of, we look at social, we look at content, we look at mindset. I interviewed a guy yesterday from America who's got 4 million views of his YouTube show, and he gets really big guests on, and so we unpacked that. That was great. And I've interviewed small business people who 12 months ago weren't doing anything.
Yeah. And all of a sudden,
marketing wise, except going to networking events and shaking hands. And he said, this guy said to me, you can only shake so many hands. And he's now been on Sky News and on other TV and radio, Triple M and AW. And he's, doing really well on LinkedIn and got a podcast himself. So, when you see someone do it and they're really been encouraging and really gone for it and with gusto, that's what you can see. And you create I think the thing is, just have a go. I think we're in the creator economy.
Yep.
Don't let perfect get in the way of getting it done. Just ship it, as a guy called Seth Godin once said. Just get it out there, just get going, and you'll improve. Whatever you start with will be terrible at the start. My first blog post, hideous. My first podcast, hideous.
But that's when you've actually grown in this space, because when you look back on episode 1 or the first piece you wrote or whatever the case is, and maybe even something that happened a year prior, depending on, I guess, the scale of amount of time people have been working on it.
Yeah,
that growth should be apparent. You should to a degree be cringing at what's there and going, how did I put this out? Because that itself is a representation of the growth that you've had through that period.
Absolutely. And even the best in the world were pretty ordinary when they started, and
absolutely,
but they had passion and heart, and they really wanted to do it and put it out there, and they weren't afraid, and that's where all the great creators start from.
Yeah. And the other pillar, of course, is the book as well, which we discussed earlier on. But again, where should people go if they want to get their hands on that one or learn a bit more about it?
Well, the earlier book was Micro Domination, but the more later one is called, a very simple title, Content Marketing for PR. What's on the tin is in the tin, and it's all about how to use all the variations of content marketing in a strategic way for PR purposes.
And again, absolutely make sure to go check that one out. Now, before we wrap things up, we'll cycle back to some Geelong Footy Club stuff, because that is the core of what we're of this show, and we started off so strongly, and we've continued with some really amazing topics. But we'll get back to the Cats a little bit here with some lighter ones as we start to wrap things up. Who's the greatest Cat that you've seen?
Oh,
I say lighter, and then I drop that bomb on you. But
yeah. Question without warning. Look, I'd still have to say Gary Ablett Senior. He just did things that is unbelievable, and that I was there that day that he Mick Martin had flogged him all day.
Oh,
and,
the
Lee Tudor had kicked this mongrel thing, and he just happened to be there, and it just floated into his hands. And did it get into a grand final? Certainly got him into
the grand final.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. He's never out of the game. Like he's
you can't rule him out.
He was he did things that I've never sort of seen anyone else do ever again. And he was mean at it as well. He was talented and mean, and just an amazing player. But geez, we've had some good ones.
Oh yeah,
Junior's not too far off as well.
Which leads to the next conversation point. And I guess considering what you just said, I perhaps know the answer already. But schoolyard pick style, you've got senior and junior there, you're getting the first cog in a larger team that you're about to form. Which one are you going to pick?
Junior.
Right. Okay. So explain. Considering what you just said,
he'll actually probably turn up for the game. I know.
That's a good point. Who knows what you're going to get with senior?
Yeah, I think I need one consistent player to make sure everything's going. You're going to get the best out of him, and he'll bring others into the game.
Consummate
because
professional.
you could have senior and have crappy midfield who doesn't even get the ball to him. So I'll take the one who can get the ball to everyone and kick a few goals along the way. That's
an excellent point. Of the current crop, though, who's the one that you just can't take your eyes off? Who's the one that continues to catch your eye, attract your attention? Who's your favourite player of the current day Cats? And I'll allow you to embrace the potential retirees if Joel Selwood happens to be that choice.
Joel's amazing. Look, I've really enjoyed. I couldn't take my eyes off him. The renewed danger and the wrecking ball that he became. I mean, he was always tough and hard and in, but there seemed to be this when he went into beast mode in the latter part of the season. I just couldn't take my eyes off it. And he was just, what he was doing and the hard work he was doing was just awesome. But a little runner up there, I've been just really rapt to see SDK. The Koning. Great
just
news.
signed on as of when we record this. He's just
Great
signed on to
news,
2025.
And just to watch him grow and blossom with confidence, it's just been fun. I've just really loved it. And I, everyone talks about how his closing speed's good and he gets the fist in and he reads the play well. I love his handball. I think his handball. You watch his handball.
He's very clean.
He's very clean for a big fella with long arms, and it's going to be a joy to watch him
for another decade plus. We hope.
Yeah, and he seems like a really nice fella. He just seems like he's taking it all in his stride.
Yeah, he doesn't seem fazed by too much, and I think that we see that on the field, and it was certainly highlighted after we actually won the flag when he didn't have to filter anything anymore, and some of his antics there. Okay, like you just save at the moment. That's as simple as it is. Whatever that moment is, you are just going to immerse yourself completely in it, and so that bodes incredibly well for football. But clearly knows how to enjoy his time off the field as well.
Well, when he snuck down and he got that goal right towards the end, and when watching it on TV, it looked like Danger had kicked it and he was wrapped and all of that, and you got the beanpole standing next to the, I don't think anyone saw him just standing there next to the goalpost, and he really let loose after that, didn't he? It was great.
Yeah, it was a great time there. I guess excluding SDK because he probably still fits into this crop that I'm referring to. Who is the one of that future crowd, that next generation that's coming through? Who's the one that you've really bought into the most? And there's obviously some fantastic other players that we're possibly not going to be shouting out here. So please, no one recognises some sort of crack at the others. But who's the one that you just can't take your eye off?
I think Max Holmes has just had such a rise. He's just always improving. He's, and when you see him on TV, it's, he's always there and everything. But when you see him at the game and the amount of, the amount of ground he covers and how fast he is, and he's just going to be something else. And again, it was just, who is this guy? And he's got speed and endurance, which is, a good combination and rare combination. And he's got smarts. And I thought in the last couple of games, up until unfortunately the hamstring, I thought he was in that last game that he did that. He was dynamic.
Yeah, it's been one of the
best.
We haven't
even seen the start of him yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we are right at the beginning of that journey for him, and it's unfortunate, obviously, that he missed out on the premiership there. So hopefully, he can add a medallion at the end of 2023. But it's. Yeah, I mean, there's something really special about him. It goes back to what you were talking about when it comes to Wellesley early on, and these players that get picked out that you don't necessarily think about because I guess it's still fairly recent, so I don't know if many people have forgotten. But he was like Geelong traded up into the deeper into the draft to get him. And
on the day, on the night.
It was on the night. Yeah, it was a live trade. Seeing that he was on the table and perhaps having a feel that he was soon going to go, but. I mean, I certainly remember all media people at the time were quite surprised and shocked that, he's going to fit, like they didn't have the proper profile. They didn't have any of those sort of things other than, son of, right. And that's about all we've kind of got here. And then he instantly proved to be a genius move from Wellesley.
Yeah. Yeah, one of his better moves. He's got a few. He's had a few.
He's the credits are long at this point, but he just continues to find ways, I'm sure.
And his apprentice looks like he's doing learning pretty well as well.
Yeah, and I think, even that itself is really fascinating, kind of how the role has been split as Andrew Mackie has kind of grown into the role that, it seems like, at least, the outside observer, that Mac is really focused on the trade period, while Wellesley is focusing more so on the draft period. I mean, we obviously saw that, Wellesley drifted away for a while and reassessed a few things, and perhaps that splitting of responsibility has been exactly what he has needed to feel renewed and continue with the club. And I mean, obviously that's a fantastic thing for the club because he's a genius and Mac is learning from it at the same time.
Can't beat that pair.
Yeah, it's going really, really well. Casting an eye forward to 2023. We've just come from winning a premiership, so it's a pretty privileged position that we're in here. But how do you see things shaping up for the 2023 season ahead?
Depending if I'm going to be pragmatic or not. Look,
I'll let you embrace either side. Take your pick.
I'm interested to see how they integrate everyone. I think there's going to be some games where they're still shuffling people around and they're different moves and it's a different look.
Yep.
And even with, never underestimate not having Sell there. Although even when he wasn't playing, he missed quite a few games last season that we did well anyway. So I think we probably covered that side of things, and we're used to that, him not being on the field. But I think it might be a little up and down. I think we've certainly got the talent there, and hopefully the hunger. You always get those teams that the hunger lose the hunger. I think the hunger's there. I think there's enough players that still want more. We've got the new guys coming in. I think there'll be a bit of shaking around though, because I've got no idea who's coming. It's such a stacked team. Who's going to come out? Who's going to come in? And and never underestimate the influence Harry Taylor has had. From that resting players and medical, and he's incredibly highly rated, and he's not there now.
Eddie Betts gone as well.
But hopefully, Tyson's just had a magnificent year. He knows. He knows what
I'm sure Eddie's still a phone call away.
I'm sure Eddie's there, and Eddie's just doing what he's done with Tyson, probably at scale by the sound of things.
It's fantastic what he's going off to do.
Just brilliant. And so I think we'll be there at the pointy end. I'm not predicting anything else above the pointy end, but with a couple of, that's interesting. Who's going to turn up? Who's out? Who's in? And how are they going to integrate some pretty good young players, and how are they going to what's the word? Transition. Might be a bit early to be transitioning, but because we don't really have to get rid of too many oldies. But how are we going to manage all that? I guess with the stock of talent, if they're all fit, that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, because if anything, we've become an even deeper team since winning a premiership, which is obviously upsetting a lot of other supporters, and to them I say, sucked in. Hopefully we can go on to win a flag again and continue to upset you a little bit, I guess. But
that would be terrific, Paul.
Yeah, it would be fantastic. And I guess for Max Holmes, where I think we're all desperately hopeful that he gets that opportunity, considering the unfortunate end for him for this year.
Yeah, who do you think will be captain?
I mean, I buy into the speculation that it's one of Danger or Tom Stewart, and I'll probably side with Tom Stewart just because Danger's closer to the end, I guess, and we can maybe extract a few more years out of Tom in that sort of role.
Yeah,
because beyond those two, I don't know yet. There's no one that immediately springs to mind. It's not to say there's not a lot of leadership there, because there is, but I don't think there's any obvious candidate amongst that next.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Tom is just, he's looking likely, isn't he? They're going to get more years out of him. My only thought is with Danger, they do like they did with Lingy, and towards the end, and good servant, give him a year or two, and then hand over to Tom.
And look, if we can continue this trend of every time we get a new captain, they go on to win a premiership, I won't object. Between Tommy Harley, Lingy, Selwood, it's.
Yep, let's do it.
It took a while in Joel's case, but I guess whoever we hand it to is going to win a flag. So let's give it to Danger, because that would presumably mean we're going to get success in a shorter span of time, right?
I like that.
I'm not a hoodoo
person. If he keeps leading
like
he did, if he keeps leading and doing what he's done in the last few games, just amazing.
So Trevor, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your own journey, sharing this love of the Cats, and some wonderful insight for myself. I'm sure Ben's sitting on the background feverishly taking notes as well, but also for everyone listening as well. It's been really, really fascinating to learn about your work, to learn about what you've done, and learn about how you've done it as well, and to get to chat the Cats as well. So if people want to reach out, learn more about you, learn more about what you're up to, where would people be best to go?
Yeah, well, if it's on business side, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. On Twitter, I'm at Trevor Young.
Right above your head in that video version.
Sorry?
Right above your head in that video version. I'm looking at it right now.
At Trevor Young in Twitter, and the easiest website is trevor.world, if you can remember that, and it's got all my links. Trevor.world, and that's the shortest URL I could get.
That's an awesome URL to be getting, though. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this journey so far. I really, really appreciated the conversation. I was fascinated throughout, and I'm sure all our viewers and listeners are too.
Thank you very much, Paul. Really appreciate it.
And to the Cats fans watching and listening, please make sure, if you're not already doing so, make sure to subscribe to The Hoop Show on YouTube. That way you're there for all the episodes as they go live. Ben's ramblings, my ramblings. There's a whole bunch of awesome videos going up often over there. We're really trying to keep things populated through the off-season and, of course, going into season 2023. Make sure, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to Behind the Play on podcast feeds as well. If you're an audio listener and you want to be able to have the show in your ears on your daily commute, it's a fantastic way to consume the show as well. And, of course, please remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you next time.